We are talking about how to make a strategic roadmap for your first R01. And so I'll quickly introduce myself. If you're new around here, my name is Sarah Dobson. I am a research grant consultant, and I work primarily with early career researchers applying to NIH. And so today we're talking about making a strategic roadmap for your R01. And I hear this a lot from folks who are in that transition stage between their career development award and their first R01. It can be really sort of scary and mystifying and nerve-wracking to sort of move into the big leagues, right? And so what I hear from a lot of people is, I just need a roadmap. I just need like a step-by-step process to get me from here to there without falling off the K cliff, right? That is, that's the big fear. And so, so I do hear this a lot. And what I will say is that, first of all, it is totally normal to have that instinct to just say, tell me what to do and I'll just do it. Because that's very likely what's gotten you success in the first place, right? It's gotten you to where you are today. You had a path to follow, you had lists to check off, you had accomplishments to achieve, and it got you where you are today. You checked all those boxes, right? But the first thing I'm going to say about this is that to successfully move from that mentored K award from a mentee into a PI role, you're going to have to do some things that don't have a roadmap, that don't already have a plan or a checklist or a set way of doing things, right? In other words, what got you here is not going to get you there. So, for example, you might be the first person in your department who is pursuing a particular path. Or it may just be that you don't have any good examples around you of building the type of career that you want to have, that you specifically would find fulfilling. So, today we're not talking about following a roadmap, we're talking about creating a roadmap. All right. And so the first thing that you need to do when you're creating a roadmap is figure out where you're headed, right? So, what is that destination? And I would urge you to consider that the destination is not just a funded R01, right? That is way too short term. We want you to be thinking more broadly about the type of career that you want to build, what you specifically find fulfilling, and what kind of impact you want to make with your research. And it may seem like this doesn't have anything to do with landing that first R01, but it absolutely does. First of all, in practical terms, it's really important to be able to explain the trajectory of your research, right? The big scientific problem that you're ultimately trying to solve, the steps that are required to get there, and how this first R01 is sort of fits into that larger picture of where you're headed, right? So that's the first way that it's actually really practical to think long term. The second reason is that it's important to know where you're headed long term, not just because you're not just writing one R01, right? You're going to be writing these grants until you retire. And so this is really about shaping your entire career and making sure that you're doing work that you really care about and that you find interesting and fulfilling. And so if you know what you want to do, and this is the really key part here, if you know what you want to do, you're less likely to be pulled in directions that are not serving you and saying yes to projects that you don't really care about, because those are going to eat up your time and take away time from building those projects and drafting those grants that are actually going to help you do the work that you want to do, right? So it may seem daunting to have to figure out your entire career at this point, and that's not that's not what I'm suggesting, right? I'm just suggesting that you have a destination in mind, that you have an idea of the type of impact that you want to have as a researcher, the type of research that actually lights you up and ignites your passion and curiosity, and that you let that sort of guide how you are thinking about the grants that you want to apply for and what that first step, R01, actually is, right? Okay, so once we have a destination, we also need to have a strategy for success. How is that first R01 going to ultimately be successful? So what you need to be thinking about here are, what do you actually need to have in place to put yourself in the most competitive position, right? Who needs to be on your team and why did they specifically need to be on the team? Are your publications demonstrating that you have the experience to lead that team? And if not, what more can you do to make that argument? Right? Do you have enough supporting evidence for your research idea? And what is the right audience for this project? So, who's going to be really excited about this? And where do you need to make sure that you're actually putting it in front of them? Okay. So, only after you have that destination and that success strategy can you actually develop your plan, really your project management plan, right? So, how do you actually operationalize this strategy? How can we put together a project management plan for this specific grant? And that, of course, is just about breaking down the massive project of writing an R01 into smaller components, and then actually making sure that you put it in your schedule and that you have enough time to do all that work. And honestly, that is often the hardest part, especially when you're just starting out, because you don't know what all of those pieces are. You don't know how long it's actually going to take. You're guessing at a lot of this, right? But that's really the process that you need to consider, is starting out really with the big picture of where am I headed in my career? What really matters to me? Where do I want to have my impact? And then starting to look more specifically at, well, how does this first R01 really fit into that sort of broader picture of where I'm headed? And how can I ensure that the work that I am doing to get this grant out the door is going to put me in a really competitive position? So, what else can I do to ensure that I am putting forward the most competitive version of this application? Right. So, once you're confident that you have that success strategy and you have that plan in place, we also need to make sure that you actually have a strong argument for why your research needs to be done, why your team is the right team to be doing it, and why your project is feasible, right? So I teach several rhetorical frameworks and writing techniques that can actually help you convey that argument to your reviewers as clearly and persuasively as possible, right? So those are really just some of the sort of broad factors, but really important factors that you need to consider when you're building that roadmap for your first R01. And if you would like some support and guidance as you build this roadmap, that is exactly what we do inside the Impact Incubator program, which is my K to R program for women faculty. So we are currently enrolling the July cohort. And if you're interested in joining us, the very first step is to take our K to R readiness assessment. And that's going to walk you through the 9 components that you need to consider as you're making this leap from your career development award to R01 level funding. And so what you'll be able to do with this assessment is figure out exactly where you need to focus your efforts to be successful. And once you've done that assessment and figured out the areas that you need to focus on, you can book a call with me to discuss your specific situation and see if the Impact Incubator is the right fit for you. So you can find the link to that readiness assessment in the video description. And I look forward to talking to you on a call. All right, take care.